episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! This is a podcast based on a blog of the same name because we are Couch Potatoes Unite, the first of its name. So why do we need a second name? My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out the blog at couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For at Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays. And as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are still being published once per week in mini seasons, kind of like The Walking Dead. So subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and brand spanking new via Google Play to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows, including but not limited to Doctor Who, Downton Abbey, How to Get Away with Murder, Broadchurch, Marvel's Daredevil and Jessica Jones, Once Upon a Time, New Girl, The Vampire Diaries, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Gotham, Supernatural, and The X-Files from its inception through its revival. We've taken a look back at True Blood, Ally McBeal, Futurama, Desperate Housewives, and 6 Feet Under, and more episodes are in the works, including a revisit for Orange is the New Black and a new panel covering the Vampire Diaries spin-off, The Originals. What's more, CPU has gone and will continue to go live. On August 8th, CPU joined forces with Grand Rapids, Michigan-based troupe No Outlet Improv for Comedy Outlet Mondays and was live at Dog Story Theater and streaming live on Facebook to talk Noit's top 5 TV comedy inspirations. On September 26th, we'll be attending Com again, this time with our Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt panel to revisit Season 2, which will also be live streamed to our Facebook page. Surprises will be in store, so make sure you like us at Facebook, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, and or our Pinterest at CPU Podcast, or subscribe to the blog, our YouTube channel, our iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Play. In the meantime, if you don't hear your show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews, and we're always seeking new panelists, so if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any one of our outlets aforementioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback, just don't lay waste to us with your dragons, okay? Today we're around the water cooler and discussing Season 6 of Game of Thrones, a fantasy drama based on a series of novels entitled A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. The Season 6 finale aired on premium cable network HBO on June 26, 2016. Game of Thrones roughly follows the storyline set out in A Song of Ice and Fire and chronicles the violent dynastic struggles among the realm's noble families for control of the Iron Throne. The series is set on the fictional continents of Westeros and Essos and interweaves several plot lines with a large ensemble cast. The 6th season, for the first time, officially surpassed the end of the narrative covered by Martin's existing and published Ice and Fire novels. Therefore, most everything depicted on the show this season was of the creator's own design. Previous CPU entries, both podcasts and blogs, centered on Game of Thrones, provided plot summary and recap following the principal characters among the more than 200 covered by the show, particularly for Seasons 4 and 5. For a more detailed plot summary, or to delve into the individual characters' past season exploits, listen to that prior podcast episode about Game of Thrones or check out our other Thrones entries on the blog, particularly since very few new characters were introduced this season. If you didn't already know, you can click the floating box at the top right of the header, the picture with the TV watcher, and search for any blog entry or prior podcast episode, which is handier than a mitten. For now, know that as of Season 6, still in play for the Iron Throne were Houses Stark, Targaryen, and Lannister, with minor but unlikely bids from Houses Tyrell, Bolton, Tully, and Greyjoy. However, many of the members of those houses saw their fortunes change dramatically for better or for worse in the 6th season. Thus, our noble group of Game of Thrones panelists, namely Kristen, Amanda, Jay, Chelsea, and Rob, have returned, excited to dissect the goings-on of Thrones' 6th season. We're also going to speculate on what Season 7 might look like, as Game of Thrones has been renewed for a 7th season by HBO. In fact, it was announced that Game of Thrones was renewed for 2 more seasons, and then the 8th season would be its last. So the panel will take some time to reflect on what is ultimately the beginning of the end. Before we do, I want to take a moment to double-check the panel's temperature. After all, as we all know, sometimes a TV show can take turns for the better or the worse in our heads, or can continue its level of awesomeness or lack thereof, depending upon the story evolution. As always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have viewed the entire show to date and will, let's face it, discuss sensitive plot points. So for those of you who are not caught up on Game of Thrones, listen at your own risk, they're going to be major spoilers. It's Game of Thrones. What can I tell you? Welcome back, panel. How are you?
Hi.
Hello.
Are you excited to talk about the awesomest show on earth right now?
Yeah.
Woo, yes. All right. Well, good. I'm going to check to see how awesome and excited you are, because I'm going to ask you a revised Game of Thrones question, the standard character question that CPU uses, only we tweak it for every show we do, and we're tweaking it between seasons because there have been some major changes in these characters from season 5 to season 6. Plus, I want to see how you're feeling about the show nowadays. Are you ready?
Yes.
Ready.
All right. So, do you watch Game of Thrones because you have to know and see all? You have to be prepared for what's to come, even if you can't fully compartmentalize your feelings of helplessness and devotion to these characters, as you know not all will survive, like Bran Stark, the new three-eyed raven. Do you watch it because you openly love it and are zealous to protect the show, whatever its transgressions, as if it was your young, even if your young are dragons? In fact, you're ready to take the Iron Throne yourself, like Daenerys Targaryen. Do you watch it because it's a good time with clever words? And if you're for anything, it's a good time and clever words. Also, it's really shown you something you can believe in, as far as TV entertainment goes, which is really something in and of itself, since you're typically somewhat cynical about things like this. Further, you love the dragons, like Tyrion Lannister. Do you watch it because to you, it's like it's got a second life, and you finally know something, or want to know something, instead of always knowing nothing, like Jon Snow? At least that's how we know him. Do you watch it to cheer for the underdogs, the names without sigils, who scheme for the better of all, like Varys, or the better of him or herself, like Lord Baelish / Littlefinger? Do you watch it because you secretly love it, like Samwise Tarly loves Gilly, or Brienne of Tarth loves Jaime Lannister? Do you watch it because it's like home to you, and nothing lights a fire under you, literally nothing, like the fight to protect your home and your family or siblings, like Sansa Stark or Theon no longer Reek Greyjoy? Do you watch it because you used to be obsessed with it, but you feel as if the show has lost some of its mojo, and you don't know what you like or what you believe about it anymore, like Melisandre? Do you watch it because you want it all, the power, the prestige, and the honor of the Iron Throne, and you'll do whatever it takes to keep it since, so you think, you've lost everything else and have nothing left to lose, like Cersei Lannister? Do you watch it but you don't know why anymore? In fact, you question whether this fight is yours. All you know is that you still fiercely love your sister in all of the inappropriate ways and will do whatever she asks of you, for now, like Jaime Lannister. Do you watch it to learn how a girl can seek revenge against those who wronged a girl, like Arya Stark? Do you watch it but don't know if you like what you're seeing? You're a natural strategist, but to you the costs outweigh the benefits of a long fight, except any fight against the onslaught of winter and the White Walkers, which could still be cool, like Davos Seaworth. Or you don't watch it anymore because you died, like Ramsay Bolton, Rickon Stark, Wun the Giant, Hodor, Grand Maester Pycelle, Marjorie Tyrell, the High Sparrow, and about hundreds of thousands of others this season. And really, those are like the principal characters, so I'm sorry there are so many. Who would like to start?
I'm Kristen. I would say my temperature is I drink and I know things, like Tyrion Lannister. It was my favorite quote, so I have to choose him as where my temperature's at. I like it. It's a good time. It's clever. I like the writing.
You love the dragons?
I think they're pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind having one.
Fair enough.
Dragons.
No,
Who doesn't want a dragon?
Well, welcome back, Kristen.
Thank you.
I think I'm sort of in the same realm of I just really enjoy it. I'm not super passionate about any one character. I just like watching the story unfold. So I don't know if that works in another one. I can't really remember.
You're lucky.
Keep them straight. But yeah, I just assume they're all dead, and then it works out well for me.
Not my favorite character.
Does that make you Tyrion?
I guess so, yeah. I think he maybe it comes from that. We're all toast at some point anyway, so that works.
Fair enough. Welcome back, Amanda.
I'm Jay. I guess I probably would fit in the Tyrion category as well, although shout out to Daenerys, as always. My love.
Good pair. Welcome, Jay.
This is Rob. I think I would relate now my temperature to Bran. Seeing as now we're 6 seasons in and we can see the end, and I'm really interested now with the end game. The pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together, and that now my brain just starts to imagine how it's all going to come together in the end, and that just kind of excites me to kind of understand fully the complete story now.
All right, welcome back, Rob.
And I'm Chelsea, and I mean, I was a Stark girl last season, and I am clearly, obviously, still a Stark girl. I am, like Sansa or Theon, that it lights a fire underneath me. There's just something about, I come from a big family. I'm one of 6 kids, and so just seeing the Stark storyline, get stronger and, things are happening, that makes me really excited, especially for next season.
All right, sounds good. Welcome back, Chelsea. And as for me, I'm still Daenerys like I was the last time. I will zealously protect the show and openly defend it because I love it so much. But I'm also teetering into the Bran category myself because I know, maybe like Amanda has said or inferred, not everybody's going to survive this game, and we're getting down to like the fair few important characters. So I'm just watching it with the anticipation of knowing all and seeing all, like the three-eyed raven that is Bran Stark. And I'm excited to talk about season 6 because, wow, what a season!
So much happened.
So
much
much
people
happened.
died.
Well, I mean, that's kind of par for the course.
I know.
But
I think out of all the seasons, I think this was the one where the most people died.
I do think it was a pretty high body count, if not the highest. So tell me, panel, let's just get right into it. What did you think of season 6? How did you like it? What didn't you like? And compare it to past seasons if you want.
I think this is one of my favorite seasons of the show overall. I know it's not following the books anymore, but I like that they were able to take creative control and starting to work towards the end point, whether it's the same end point that the beloved author has in mind or not. I don't know, there were some unexpected moments and some things you could see coming a mile away, but I don't know, I think I'm going to say it's my favorite.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to make that leap.
All right.
For me, it was interesting not to have the books to refer back to anymore because I did read the books. Every other season it was, when are they going to get to this part? When are they going to get to this part? And now, oh goodness, now we're seeing it kind of come together and we have to just wait and watch. Just like everybody else had to who hadn't read the books.
Welcome to my world.
Yes. Be one of us.
I'm a book reader. I want to know.
You're one of us, yeah. No choice.
Welcome
You're
to the dark
helpless.
side.
Overall, I enjoyed it. I thought that from a television making perspective, as far as constructing episodes go, I thought that they took a lot of chances, which they could because they were freed from the constraints of having to follow a specific plot line and sort of branch out on their own. I thought that some of the choices they made were very, very good. And in fact, I would say that the final episode of this season was perhaps one of my favorite episodes of television I've ever seen. That being said, I thought there were some things that they dwelled on that didn't work, and so I'm not saying that it was bad or even had low lows, because nothing is low, but some of it was kind of pedestrian for Game of Thrones standards, but some of it was really, 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 really good. So overall, I would say a pretty good season of Game of Thrones.
Definitely would agree. I think one of my favorite parts of this season was the flashbacks. Getting a lot more in-depth, the story behind the story, understanding kind of how things became the way they are. And then the flashback with Hodor just blew my mind with Bran. That just, opens up. Well, obviously that, yeah.
Blew your mind, Rob?
Poor choice of words. Very poor choice of words.
He rolled the door around.
He did hold the door, but for me, the idea of Bran going back in time and the dimensions and how it all, just opened a lot more opportunities to, I guess, what they can do in the future as well.
And I think I'm with Kristen. I think this is my favorite season so far, just because they covered so much ground with everything, and that was really exciting to just see the storylines finally feel like they were really progressing, and then finally all kind of coming together slowly. I think they're starting to overlap, and it's all starting to make more sense.
Yeah, the pieces are in place.
And the pieces are moving, and they're moving much faster than I feel like previous seasons. And that was me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The pacing really picked up this season, and I think it has to, because they've kind of put themselves into a box. As I noted in the intro, they're going to go out after 8, so whatever happens, they have to wrap it up. And you can really feel that push. So to that end, I'm going to kind of ride the fence and agree with everything that's been said. On the one hand, it is one of my favorite seasons, if not my favorite season, just because it was so action-packed and in many ways so satisfying. You got to watch these fruitions of things that have been building over such a long period of time. On the other hand, I also agree with Jay's observation that some things were really kind of glossed over, or maybe not done as much justice as they should have been, because they're now pushing. It's like that very first, like when the fish gets away from the fishing pole. It's got a really good propulsion to start, and then picks up its regular swimming pace, and that's what I feel will probably happen in season 7. But we don't know.
Well, aren't season 7 and 8 going to be shorter?
They are.
I think they're both 7 or 8 episodes apiece,
7
so
episodes.
the pacing is going to be really important.
But the episodes are supposed to be longer as well. They're going to be more like an hour and a half.
I didn't hear that. That's exciting.
Is what we've heard. So
That'd be good.
That would make up for the cutting the series.
I hope that's true. I have not read that the
Yeah.
episode length will be longer. That makes me feel better. Because I'll be still getting the same amount of season.
Yeah, just in a different way.
Not to make a weird parallel, but did you guys watch Lost?
Yes.
So, Rob brought up a really interesting point earlier when he said that, we're getting toward the end, so you want to see how everything ends, right? And I always feel I feel like Lost has burned me in the sense that I'm just I don't necessarily, I do want to see how Game of Thrones ends. I think we all do, but at the same time, I'm like, if we're all so focused on the end,
We won't enjoy the journey.
Or is there they may let us down like they did before?
And so it's tough. And I feel like there were times, without getting in specifics, the episode this season, I don't know if it was 6, 7, 8, it was right around there. It was the one with the Hound, and he was building the
New Sept.
the new Sept with Ian McShane. And as a one-off, as an episode, I loved it. I thought it was a really strong episode of television, but yet in the back of my mind, I sat there and I said, why are they wasting an entire episode on this?
Yep.
I love this. This is really good.
But where does it fit into the overall?
But time's ticking.
There's no time!
Yeah.
So there's been and I'm just going to start tossing out theories as we fold in the plot points from the season. So since we're talking about this episode, one of the theories is, since the Hound, now alive, and re-encountered the Brotherhood without banners, this is what Lady Stoneheart, who, spoiler, that's who Catelyn Stark becomes in death, if you will. And for a long time the producer said, she's not going to be on the show. But what the theory is running right now, why else introduce this particular set of characters, this particular scene at this particular juncture, without hinting toward maybe, in fact, they lied about Jon Snow being dead. Why wouldn't they lie about that?
I think one of the
Did they lie, though?
They did bold-faced to say Jon Snow is dead.
Well, he was dead.
Yeah, he was.
Factually correct.
Yeah.
Did anybody ask him if he was coming back to life? I think everybody asked him.
I think, yeah. But they didn't answer that question.
They said he's dead.
They
just evaded the question.
So alive omission is still alive.
But I think as far as the Lady Stoneheart theory goes, I really want to see Lady Stoneheart. I'm a big Catelyn Stark fan, and the actress in general is phenomenal. But they were saying the person who brings her back to life, he's still alive in the series, or he was at that point when they were showing the Brotherhood without banners.
He was brought back to life in season 3.
Right, and he's still alive now, but supposedly to bring Lady Stoneheart about, he sacrifices himself to bring her back. I don't know, I'm not a book reader.
Oh, Dundarian. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, but he's still around, and so they're like, she can't be around if he's still around.
How do we know he'll still be around?
Right. But
still
but now it's
sacrifice
been
himself.
so much time has passed since the the Red Wedding, and I guess she was resurrected 3 days after being in the
Which
river.
again, I would
That was a long
posit
time.
with 14 episodes of this show left, do you want to waste one of those episodes on
Yeah, that's a big.
This.
That's a
Big-
big point to kind of tie up.
Yeah, it is. It's huge.
Winter is coming.
Right.
it's here?
Winter's here.
It's here.
It's starting to
It's
snow.
done.
Yeah.
The
It
White
has
Walkers
arrived.
are coming.
Oh god.
Just terrifying.
I actually enjoyed the absence of the White Walkers this season in the
Right?
sense that I liked them. I thought that Hard Home in the previous season was one of the best.
So good.
It is the best episode, one of the best I've ever seen. Just that whole action sequence. But I like the fact that they were mentioned. They're you know the threat's there. And I like the fact that we sort of got a break because we're definitely going to see them here coming
Yeah.
to the end stretch, and I think it makes a bigger impact.
It's almost like they're off building their forces.
Which
Again-
begs the question, how much do you think we'll see them versus the battle in the South? Since
we have
Dani
to
is
see all
coming
of it.
with her fleet
Well,
finally.
That's the big
They're gonna-
question, right?
It's just going to be war from here till the end.
That's true.
So much
I mean,
war.
they're going to tie everything together because the South is going to have to band together in some way to go fight them as one unit. Otherwise, if they try to fight them individually, the White Walkers are going to win.
So it's going to be like season 7 of Deep Space Nine. It's just battle the whole time.
Pretty much, yeah.
I would agree. I like
Shout out
the absence
Trekkies.
of the White Walkers this season, but again, I like the flashback to see how White Walkers were created.
Yeah.
Yes.
That, again, was just a great surprise and a little Easter egg to find out how it all started.
Yeah, I think we got
The
just
children of the forest making
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, I think we got just enough of them to make them menacing and for us to remember that they are there and anticipate problems and not actually have the problem come yet. And I think that was a good use of them after so much, that one big episode this previous season.
And I think we were also reminded of some key points on how to take down the White Walkers, like with the dragon glass and the Valyrian steel. And lo and behold, now we have dragons on their way to Westeros that can make some more dragon glass, perhaps. So they're good little reminders, like you said. They're still there, and here's some clues you need to keep in the back of your mind.
Actually, it was a great bookend, just to piggyback off of Amanda's point, how the White Walkers were there just enough to be menacing. One of the most exciting and chilling scenes for me this season was in the very first episode. We get to revisit Bran for the first time in a season, who's been hanging out with the old three-eyed raven, learning the ways of the Force, if you will, because this is what this reminds me of.
That's true.
And he decides to go rogue, independent, and plug himself into the tree network, and then exposes himself and undoes the magic that is created to protect against the White Walkers, makes contact with the Night's King in his vision.
yeah.
That was pretty freaky.
Yes, terrifying.
And it led to some tragic consequences.
Yeah.
Again, tissues.
Moment of silence for Hodor, anyone?
Yeah.
Raise a glass.
I mean, that was amazing, but also extremely, extremely, my heart died a little bit.
Oh, it was even
yeah.
worse. The next morning I was at work and I have to take an elevator up to my floor and somebody of course comes in and hold the door. Right after. And they don't watch Game of Thrones. Like this person does not watch Game of Thrones, but
Did you start crying?
I almost didn't want to hold the door.
This doesn't end well.
Their lives.
Just fetal position at that point.
You can't make this stuff up.
I know. So sad.
But of course, then we learn, as what Rob alluded to earlier, that Bran's power extends so much more than just seeing things. And we get those marvelous flashback scenes, which people have been hinting about, well, they were hinting about right up until the point as far as what was going to happen this season. Finally seeing, and major spoiler, the Tower of Joy. The much infamous or famous Tower of Joy. And even though it wasn't confirmed per se within the season finale, HBO sent out an infographic just to make sure that you got the point that R plus L does in fact equal J. How do we feel about that?
I'm glad they confirmed it. It'd be really silly of them not to go that route, I guess.
Why do you say that?
And what's the point?
Okay.
I mean, it's a Song of Ice and Fire. Jon Snow / Targaryen is literally the combination of ice and fire. Why else? Where could they go if he wasn't a Targaryen Stark baby? What's the point? Why name the whole book series A Song of Ice and Fire if that's not the end game of him taking the Iron Throne or him having a very big part in it?
Interesting.
There are other fiery people in this world.
There are, but are there other fiery, icy people in this world? I mean, there could be a team up between a Stark and a Targaryen who represent ice and fire, respectively, but
which then goes with the three-headed dragon theory.
Exactly, which, again, that could be the end game, too.
Yes.
Maybe it's a three-headed ruler. You know, the three rulers together do the Iron Throne. It's not just one person, it's three people.
It's really interesting, and it's probably smarter than I can think of, because to me, when I always thought of A Song of Ice and Fire, I always thought of the collision of ice and fire rather than a melding, because to me, the end game is literally the ice coming to meet the fire.
And who says it can't be in one person?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it can be interpreted a bunch of different ways,
Yeah.
but that's how I've always seen it since day one is, you know, once I heard the theory for the first time, you know, before I started watching the show, I'm like, oh, okay.
I gotta tell you though, to be honest, if this whole thing ends with Jon Snow and the Iron Throne, I will punch my television.
that's why I hope it's the three. I hope it's the three rulers. I think, you know, the Song of Ice and Fire, the three-headed dragon. It just, I don't know. I like the three. You know, Dany, Tyrion, Jon, or whoever the third one is.
The Game of Thrones has ended in a tie.
Well,
it's a new beginning.
The hippie in me wants the tie. I do want the tie. I believe in the three-headed dragon theory. But I come from the lost school of television as well.
Me too, that's why I'm
so I'm just a little bit, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that this...
I'm praying it doesn't
even if the three-headed dragon comes in and saves the day, that doesn't mean that three people are going to be on the throne.
Right.
Somebody's going to die. I just feel that, because everybody dies, and all the people have died. There's so much death in this world. Just saying. What else did you think of season 6? What are some other things you liked or disliked?
Ramsay dying.
Yes.
That was a big help.
And the way that he died.
Oh, yes, let's talk about that.
Releasing the hounds on him was perfect.
Yeah.
But you're a Sansa girl, you take it.
Oh, yeah.
Was it perfect, or are you worried about her now? Because that shows a definitely marked change in the way she approaches her problems. So
yeah, but I think it made sense for their situation that she would be that way. And, you know, she's growing up. She's seeing the world as it is, and she's been through a lot of crap. And, you know, I think I would have handled the situation the same way.
So do unto others as they do unto you.
Exactly.
You know, he killed his stepmother and half-brother like that, so why not meet his end the same way?
Right. Yeah, I don't think you could have had that end in a more satisfying way. If you wanted to be the most satisfying result for the audience and for Sansa and everyone who is getting eaten by dogs, then that's it. You know, it makes sense, and he had to meet a terrible end because he did that to so many people that it's just not satisfying if he doesn't suffer horribly. And the idea that he, you know, those were his dogs, and he tortured them until they abused everybody else, and then it just shows they're not loyal. They're only loyal when they get what they want. You know, it's kind of poetic justice. Yeah.
But I don't think it would have been as satisfying if Theon would have released the hounds or done him in.
Right, or if Jon Snow had beat him to
a pulp. It wouldn't have been, it still would have been a satisfying, oh, finally he's dead, but it wouldn't have been that yes moment of Sansa doing it.
Right.
It was a very strategic choice, and I applaud them for that.
Well, it was one time that they actually let her take control, which was nice. You know, we see all these other women in the world who do have agency and who take things on, and she hasn't been one of those people yet. And it's fun to see her come into her own and start playing the game a little bit in a way that doesn't entirely rely on her looks.
Well,
I mean, a little bit, you know, because she still has the, you know, whatever he is coming in to save her, you know, the knight in sketchy armor. But
it was her agency that prompted her to write to Littlefinger to get the Knights of the Vale and to help her brother, because Jon was a stubborn ass.
She's using her resources.
Yeah,
right?
she's playing the game smart.
Yeah.
She
so
knows
now we're bridging into another topic. So, of course, Jon and Sansa reunite this season, which for me was a joyous moment.
I love it. The Stark kids are coming back together.
I know. That's the only moment I cried this season.
I did too. I was like,
Sansa, they're back together.
They've been
Yes, and it was actually very interesting that it was the two siblings who got along the least that reunited first. Just to bridge off this topic, they get together. Ramsay threatens to essentially kill Rickon, which he makes good on later on. We'll get to that in a second. If Jon doesn't return Sansa, quote unquote. And so Sansa says, let's declare war. We gotta fight. We gotta do this. And then they go around the north trying to recruit allies. They get a 12-year-old named Lyanna.
Yes! She is my queen! Yes! Actually, change my vote. I want her to win the Iron Throne.
Yes!
Lady Mormont for the win.
100%.
Who was named after the Stark's aunt, the famous Lyanna Stark. And somebody else I don't even remember because they're not even as cool as she is. And then they all get together to fight Ramsay, who comes with his much larger army because everybody is kowtowed to him by this point. And there's this standoff. The Battle of the Bastards is what it's informally called.
Formally, it was the episode title.
There you go. So what did you think about? That's the penultimate 9th episode. There's always a battle in the 9th episode. What'd you think of it?
I mean, the reaction on the internet with a lot of people was, they were like, wow, this is one of the best 9th episodes the Game of Thrones ever had, and I vehemently disagreed. The battle scenes were great. I mean, yay, battle and blood and all that sort of stuff. And as you guys have already said, the ultimate of Sansa dispatching of Ramsay was very awesome and very satisfying. I just could not really get very emotionally excited about the battle because this is our Stark people and Lady Mormont and all these people staring down, and they get absolutely whooped by Ramsay Bolton and his forces. They get, like, Jon Snow's going to die, and then Baelish, Littlefinger comes with the Vale army and bails them out, which, as you said, Kristen, Sansa had the agency to write to them, but that's not in the battle plans. The battle was not run in, get killed, almost die, and then get bailed out. And so it was very tough for me to sort of, on the whole, watch this sort of battle where they essentially lose, and then they pull it out with a Hail Mary at the end. And then Jon Snow gets in the castle and beats people up.
And they almost lose because of Jon Snow.
Yeah, so Jon Snow now, he didn't want to accept help from outside the North, which I think that's a problem. You have to, if you want to take down the bad guy with a huge army, you gotta...
Our icy fire hero.
But again, I was like,
sarcasm.
I didn't see anybody but Jon Snow winning that battle.
Well, of course.
I mean, it's like...
And that also sort of takes
Jon's
takes the emotional sort of weight out of that as well, because they're like, it's the battle, Jon versus Ramsay. Jon will win.
Well, Jon's gonna win. It's just, is Ramsay gonna die or not?
I mean, they already brought the guy back from the dead.
They're not
just going to have him die in this stupid battle.
Right, yeah.
Like, there's just no way, and so it takes away some of that worry.
Like, I wasn't on the edge of my seat. It's more like, how's Jon going to get out of this pile of dead people?
Yeah, that pile of dead people was kind of crazy, too.
Yeah, I was worried. I was still worried, like, that maybe this isn't going to work out, just because it's Game of Thrones, and you never know what's going to happen, and... Yeah, so I was a little worried when he was getting buried under dead bodies.
Well, and it either, it goes one of two ways then. Either he learns from this experience and actually becomes a better fighter because really his, strategy was terrible.
Yeah, it was awful.
Or it's foreshadowing that he's just a big old loser and really needs to have other people bail him out. I don't know.
Well, and it's good that we're talking about this because I agree. I think even though the phalanx scene and they create the device of the pile of dead bodies was an interesting choice from a filmmaking perspective. I mean, that was pretty giganimous for a television show, but at the same time we had just lived through Hardhome. He battled all those White Walkers and Whites, survived that. He literally died, came back to life and survived that. Like, why would he just toss and there's an implication there that he does have sort of a death wish because he doesn't think he should be brought back. But was that too easy? And do you think he learned his lesson?
Hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know. Sansa tried to talk some sense into him afterwards.
He should just listen to her because she's right.
She warned him not to play in Ramsay's games, and Ramsay goaded him enough to charge after him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got to be... We don't see him completely taking on an effective role as a leader yet because he hasn't learned to listen to the people who are telling him things. Mm-hmm. And in order for him, if he is going to be the king, he is going to take over, he's going to have to learn to do that. and not just rush into things the way he wants to, because he is so emotional in his decision making, and we've seen that does not work in that world at all. So he's going to have to adjust, or else he's going to be in trouble.
Basically, he's one lucky bastard.
Literally.
But
Again.
I applaud Chelsea.
I tip my hat.
Again, I was sad to see 1-1 go.
Yes, the
Giants.
giant 1-1.
Yeah, he had a special place.
He
in my
fought
heart.
bravely.
He did.
He kicked down the door.
That was
That
really
wasn't
heartbreaking. That was a really touching moment.
Yeah.
A lot of wildlings died for Jon Snow. More than they did in Hardhome.
Yeah.
Here again, I say. So that was my problem with it. It felt a little anticlimactic compared to Hardhome. Hardhome was, I think, a much more superior 9th episode battle scenario, much more threatening, much more intense than this. I mean, this one was definitely suffocating. I could feel the claustrophobia when the things started to pile up and get closer, but that was the extent of the feeling that I experienced as a viewer.
It's almost the opposite, right? Because that, Hardhome was such a grand scale, and it was so broad and so wide open. They're coming from everywhere, but yet the battle is everywhere, and then they are able to escape. Whereas this one, they're very much, it's almost the counterpoint. It's the, hey, look, it can go this way too.
I think Hardhome, it was such a game changer. Like, looking back on it, that is where the needle moved. Like, we saw the extent of the Night King's army and his powers and everything he can do, and this is going to be a tougher fight than they thought. Where the Battle of the Bastards, it was more about giving the audience what they wanted. It was giving us that satisfaction of no more Ramsay, and while it was still a good battle, I agree Hardhome was better. If I had to compare the two, I would pick Hardhome every time.
So in terms of Sansa Hail Marrying on behalf of her brother who didn't listen to her, or did he listen to her but just didn't listen to anybody in the end, really, because that's what it was tantamount to, she rebuffs Littlefinger. She tells him off in this season and basically says, you left me with Ramsay, he raped me, he did all of these horrible things to me, but then she turns around and writes to him to ask for this, which is good, it saved our main characters, but how do you feel about their dynamic? At the end of the season, I don't know if you caught it, but Jon gets declared King of the North by all of the northern people that survived this battle, while Sansa exchanges a look with the ever-scheming Littlefinger. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I've thought about that relationship and how they interact, because he had, the thing with her mom, and then...
Well, now he has the thing
with
her.
her. It's like this sketchy, intergenerational bizarreness, but it's, if he can't have her, does he still owe her loyalty? Or is he still hoping something will happen and she's going to string him along?
Yep.
Or she's going to see that that's the option for her right now. I mean, she's kind of been passed around at this point. She might as well use it to her advantage.
Or does she want to be queen in the North, and maybe Littlefinger can help her move Jon where he needs to go, and she can take up the position that she was essentially born to do?
He straight up said, I want to be sitting on the throne next to you. Right?
Right.
Yep.
So he's clearly got ulterior motives and his own end game that he wants to see.
I wonder
come
what
to
his next
fruition.
step is. I mean, he's been forecasting all of his steps up until this point.
I think story-wise that is the crux, because from what is understood from this is that, there's a ruler in King's Landing that rules the Seven Kingdoms, but the North, which has been firmly under the thumb of the Stark family forever, they're part of the kingdom, but they're kind of their own, we're good up here, we'll help you out, we're friends, and stuff like that, but we're only concerned with the North, no thanks with all your South stuff. And Jon, as it seems pretty happy with that, in the sense of, I'm cool with the North. Like, Jon Snow does not have, right now, aspirations for Iron Thronage, right? And I don't necessarily think that he does, and I can't really speak for Sansa, but we know Littlefinger does. And so I think that that's sort of the thing, where I think, if I were to predict, I would say that Jon and Sansa like each other, and, I think they're cool with, splitting tasks as far as things go, but the ultimate thing is that if Littlefinger and Sansa start plotting, or she starts using him, or they start getting aspirations for beyond the North, that's where it's going to go, because it's not going to come from Jon solely. So I think, Littlefinger's the engine that's going to drive some conflict in the North. for good or for bad or for whatever.
I like it.
Yeah, well, Littlefinger's going to drive conflict no matter where he goes.
Right.
Because he's only looking after his own self-interests.
It's true. So let's talk about House Targaryen. Let's move over to Essos for a bit. Dany was kidnapped by the Dothraki, and then she made them feel her fire.
She was kidnapped and then she burned them. Okay.
She killed all the calls.
Yes. And then they became part of her ever-growing army. And Tyrion was left to steward Meereen in her absence. How do we feel about his efforts?
Didn't go so well.
But I think he did the best he could under the circumstances, because Slaver's Bay or Dragon's Bay, whatever it's called now, that's a pretty rough territory. But I feel like he was able to kind of cut his teeth a little bit and maybe learn some lessons and learn from his mistakes.
And he was able to show his loyalty, which means a lot to her.
Yeah.
And I think it will going forward. I mean, she made him hand, right? So it puts him in a place of respect and power that he hasn't necessarily been, but that he's always been equipped for. You know, he understands how a lot of that politicking works, and she doesn't necessarily. It's the same argument, you know, that I said about Jon, is she tends to make decisions with her heart, but she's willing to listen to reason, which is what I like about her. And Tyrion is able to give some of that reason and step back and say, wait, just a second, have you considered this? And she values that in him.
And they balance each other out quite nicely.
Indeed.
So there were some pretty funny exchanges between him and Missandei and Grey Worm, which I appreciated.
Added some levity.
The drunken joke telling.
Yes.
Kind of like drinking games.
Yeah, well, and what I noticed this season was that aside from those moments, there was no comic relief. Those were it. So how did you feel about that? Or about, here was my favorite moment from Essos, when he goes down to let the two dragons who are chained up, Rhaegal and Viserion, go. And they respond to him, which means there's some leverage for his part of the three-headed dragon theory, if you believe it's Tyrion. Now, there's another raging theory. We'll get to that in a minute, but what did you think about that? Or did you think about that?
It was a good scene. I mean, I thought that on the whole, with Tyrion over there, it did a lot of things. I mean, established, because he wasn't super great at ruling, did the best he could, but because he didn't have some sort of natural greatness for it, I think that, you know, anyone that's like, I want Tyrion to end up on the Iron Throne, it's like, no, it's not where he belongs. But ultimately, I think all of us, you know, I love Tyrion in the books, and I love him in the show, and all that, and I think because we love him because he's smart and he's clever, and he's willing to sort of be that sort of satiric voice of levity for everything around him. But I think that what this season did was it gave him a purpose that he lacked before, and you know, now he's bound to Daenerys, and he wants her to be on the Iron Throne, and I think for the first time in all these seasons, and probably his whole life, he actually has a motive for doing what he does.
Well said.
Yes, well said.
Well, I think too, he's behind a person that he believes in,
Yeah.
that he thinks he can do, and that's a big thing too. Because when he was handed the king prior, I don't think he really believed in the person he was serving, and now this time he does, and that makes a difference.
Was he?
You don't believe to Joffrey?
Yeah.
He was hand of the king in the South for a while.
Yeah, I know, but for who was king at that
Joffrey
point?
was king.
Okay. I've lost track. Well, of course he didn't believe in that.
Right, nobody thought Joffrey was a good idea.
That's where I was going with it.
Because Robert died while Ned was still king.
Yes.
Or Ned was still hand. And
Yeah. Where did Lord Varys go? And how did he get on the ship so quickly?
You know, I had that same complaint. That was like I said, I thought that episode 10 was one of the best episodes of TV I've ever seen, ever.
Yes.
And that was like my one nitpick, was how did Varys get on the ship so fast? But then I was like, you know, they've never claimed, and they've always claimed, that the passage of time is not linear, in the sense that, like, it's a stable, linear amount of time passing. Like, you know, the next scene could be an hour later, or it could be 3 weeks later, or something like that. So we don't know. So, you know, even though it looked to us, because they, like you guys were saying, the season kind of sped up a lot, and especially at the end, it was kind of like, okay, here we go. And it's like, well, how did Varys get from Dorne to the ship so fast? And it was like, it probably took a while. We're just skipping a lot of time.
Yeah, I just didn't think anything of it. I thought we were fast forwarding. Like,
Yeah, it
it's
just
fine.
seemed like it was a time jump, that's all.
Time jump.
Fair enough.
Which is what happened with Arya's storyline as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
She got back to Westeros on
Really quick.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Arya.
Yeah.
What do we feel about now? She had a big season. She was blind for a minute. because she was being punished for her misuse of the many-faced god. And then she was assigned an assassination that she didn't want to commit because she met the person she was supposed to kill. Let's talk about the waif. Who thankfully met her end. I'm not a fan.
But it was off camera, which is kind of disheartening.
Well,
I wanted to see a little beatdown between Arya and the waif. I mean, I know we kind of got that a lot since she went to Bravos, but I wanted to see at least something.
you saw a big chase. She flipped off bridges and stuff.
Yeah, but...
Why do you think they did that?
I'm going to just say it. There was a stupid theory going around that Arya and the waif are actually the same person. That the waif is the part of Arya that she needs to become to be a girl, to be a faceless man. And that the reason we didn't see it happening is because you can't kill a part of yourself and still live. But you can fight your battles internally.
That's an interesting theory.
Yeah.
I don't know if I subscribe to it.
I don't either.
Like, how would that even be possible?
I still thought that scene was pretty satisfying, even though we didn't see anything, just because of, I mean, Arya got the shit beat out of her by the way.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
multiple times.
Right, when she was blind, and I think it was, she had that kind of one-up on her, like, I did all of this fighting, and, was able to fight in the dark, and...
Yeah,
Well, because she learned it while she was blind.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
I
her
think that's
blowing out the
significant.
candle was pretty neat.
Exactly.
Yeah, it gave her the advantage because she had undergone all of that abuse as a blind woman or blind girl. But then she makes her way back across the sea super fast and ends Walder Frey, one of her list.
Oh, in one of the best ways.
With the hot pie story. How do we feel about that?
Great justice.
And I've heard some stories like that happening, like in, back in the olden days. There's always these little legends, so it's kind of neat to see them pull a little possible piece of history into a fantasy world.
It's so gross.
It was gross. It was satisfying at the same time.
I mean, yeah, that guy was a jerk. He deserved it. It's fine. I'm not I'm not mourning him by any
No.
Still, we saw what was in the pie. That was gross.
I was happy to see Arya's storyline finally progress.
Yes,
it
needed to.
Yeah, get out of there.
Yeah, kind of in a stagnant state of just the same thing over and over. To finally take action was fun.
Where do you think she's going to go now?
She's got a long list.
Yeah, who's on the list?
I don't know. She could go in either direction.
She's going to be making her way to King's Landing.
You think so?
She has to.
But she saw the play and she sympathized with Cersei, the woman playing Cersei's character.
She sympathized with the woman playing Cersei, not Cersei herself. Cersei's still on her list. She's still on her list.
Okay.
And she's crazier than ever.
Yeah, now she's even worse. So Arya, just like all the other players, they're going to be heading to King's Landing.
I don't know. I think we're going to see a conflict with Arya. Now, whether or not she actually does off Cersei, I don't think she's going to off Cersei.
No.
I don't think she's going to be responsible for that. I think she's going to hesitate.
Conflict with Arya.
Yeah.
She murdered 2 people, put them in a pie.
Those were the obvious people, though.
Fed them to her father, and then slashed the father's throat, and then smiled and laughed as he was bleeding out. There's no conflict in her.
Maybe not with regard to Walder Frey. I just think it's going to be different.
Well, now she has the tools to get rid of everything.
That was my other takeaway from that. It was satisfying, yes, and hey, Walder Frey dying is super thumbs up. But I was like, how far gone is Arya Stark that she literally can do this? Like, this is not like, oh, I stabbed someone for great justice. This is...
She's taking a little too much pleasure in it.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Cersei, because there's even more theories that are spinning out about this. Also, a pretty significant development happened there in King's Landing, especially by the end of the season. So all along in Bran's visions, we keep getting flashes of the Mad King Aerys, the one that Jaime slayed, okay? The Targaryen that caused, Robert overthrew, and they were killed, and chased after Targaryens, and that's why Dany's the only one. Officially, what we find out, or what we are reminded, is that he kept a stash of that wildfire stuff that was used in that big battle in season 2 or 3, whatever that 2, I think. And she remembers it. She uses Varys' little birds, which turn out to be children, and enacts this plan, which lights the wildfire, which happens to be under the sept, conveniently, where the High Sparrow is still rising in power. And when this happens, it takes out like half of King's Landing, including the entire Tyrell family minus Olenna, which we'll get to in a second. And when it's done, Tommen, because he's watching this, she's kept him in the castle, knowing that Marjorie bit it, kills himself, falls out of the window, and actually a gorgeously shot sequence, I think. And then she seats herself on the Iron Throne. Let's talk about that. What do you think?
Well, at the start of the episode, I knew where she was going to end up.
Yeah. When she doesn't show up for her trial, you know something.
Well, and if you looked at the way she was dressed, it was very militaristic.
Like Tywin.
Yes, she was going to be making some moves in that episode. So as soon as I saw the way she was dressed, I said, okay, let's just see how this plays out. And she's just ruthless with the way she enacts that plan. I mean, it's just...
Well, the funny thing is, too, technically she is Tommen's heir. She's her own son's heir to the throne with no living heir. You know, she technically is his next of kin, not because she's his mother, but through another weird, dynasty chart. And you can look it up online. I'm sure if you Google it, you can find it pretty easily. But it was very interesting for me to read that and realize, she can get to the throne not only because she's the hand, but because she's technically the last surviving heir in the Lannister line.
Not Jaime? How does Jaime not figure?
Because...
Just assuming patricide exempts.
Yeah, it's because he...
Kingsguard.
Yeah, Kingsguard. He's not able to take it because of his position with the Kingsguard previously.
I can't remember all the
He essentially abdicated his claim to the throne.
You become the Kingsguard, Lannister can't rule Casterly Rock. Like, he can't do anything.
He gave up rights to everything.
Okay. Fair enough.
That makes sense.
Good reminder. So there's a couple theories running around. First of all, we should make mention that Maggie the Frog's prophecy, which we saw in the 5th season, has now all but come to pass. There's only one thing left to this prophecy. The first part of the prophecy was that all 3 of her children would die. We've seen that happen. The second part of the prophecy is that her younger brother, quote unquote, will essentially end her life. And of course, as many people have pointed out, though Tyrion is technically her younger brother, Jaime is the younger of the twins. So who do we think is? Do we think this prophecy is going to come true?
Yes.
And who do we think is going to be
Jaime?
The way they shot the scene when she sat on the throne and they had
And that knowing look.
cast some looks at each other, they had.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because they wouldn't show us they wouldn't show us the flashback of the prophecy if it wasn't going to play an important part down the line, if it wasn't going to come to pass. And I mean, I think both brothers are somewhat of an obvious choice, but the fact of Jaime and Cersei's history with each other, he's the more likely candidate at this point.
So there is another roving theory, which I put in the talking points, and I want to get your thoughts on it. So part of the three-headed dragon theory is that all of the riders have to be part Targaryen, and there's this theory that Tyrion is somehow Aerys's son, that he had an affair with the Lannister mother and produced Tyrion. There is a theory that Cersei and Jaime might actually be children of Aerys, whether Tyrion is or not. And there were some pretty stark visual parallels being drawn between Cersei and Aerys this season. Also, we got Jaime's huge waxing to Tully, Catelyn's brother, when he was chained up there at River Run, about the history of the family. What do you think about this?
It's interesting because we think that if this theory, the three-headed dragon, the 3 riders, comes to pass, everybody would want it to be Tyrion because he's so into dragons. He's studied them, he loves them. It's his. When he saw them for the first time, the look on his face was just amazing. But if it's Jaime instead, that it's an interesting twist, and it would be interesting to see how that plays on Tyrion, since he's not able to ride one of the dragons. He can work with them, he can communicate with them effectively, but they're not going to respond to him the same way that his brother does. Will he feel cheated again?
Is the theory that the 3 dragon riders have to survive and rule,
No.
or can the dragon riders die?
The theory is only that there are
Okay.
there's one rider for each of the dragons, and that they will defeat Winter, not necessarily that they will rule.
Okay.
And I'm raising this because I want it to be Tyrion. I personally want it to be Tyrion. But there's a really compelling argument for Jaime, because he has been kind of on this self-improvement path, if you will, throughout the seasons, through his exposure to Catelyn, to Brienne, to the various people he's talked to. He's not the Lannister son anymore, per se. He still has this devotion to Cersei, and that's ultimately what holds him back. But if she weren't around, what would Jaime be like? And then, considering all the discussion about how similar Tyrion was to Tywin, as opposed to, Aerys was no strategist. He was just power hungry and the product of incest. So he was mad.
Well, I don't know, this might be jumping the gun, but I guess this is my question. Where do you see, because my answer to this kind of goes with, where do you see at the end of this, at the end of everything, what's the end result? What's the end game? Who's on the Iron Throne at the end?
I think it can only be one person, but I don't think it would be Jaime, and I don't think it would be Tyrion.
Right. So I think that you're sort of not saying what we're all sort of thinking, right? We have sort of this end game in mind, and we sort of have who we think is going to be on the Iron Throne in the end game. So then, once you have that, you sort of have to kind of say, look at all the other people and say, do they fit into some sort of structure within that person's reign, or are they going to die? Do they serve some other purpose? And you brought up a good point with Jaime and like a redemption arc, and a lot of us, I said it, I think Kristen and I think Amanda said it, where you said, is Cersei going to die by one of her younger brothers? And you said yes, and probably Jaime. Mm-hmm. So if we're saying if Jaime ultimately kills Cersei, is that the end of the redemption arc? Or is riding a dragon and helping defeat Winter the end of the redemption arc?
Good question.
I don't see that from him. I see all of his redemption as the steps along the way for him to see that his sister has to go. This is the one person he's protected no matter what she did. And terrible, awful things, pushing children out of windows, blowing up
he
the whole town.
Pushed the children out
but
the
still,
window.
but he did it for her.
He did.
You know what I mean? He was willing to do this for her, and I think he's getting to the point where he's not willing to do those things for her anymore.
Now she's caused the death of 2, if not all 3 of her children. And if that was the last thing that was tying them together at this point with his personal evolution, Cersei's only going to get more dangerous without her children.
Right.
Jaime is going to pretty much sever his ties with Cersei because that is no longer there.
Well, and is that where some of those visual ties that were referenced come into play, is that he can see those parallels and see she's got to go.
Well, again, he is the Kingslayer. Why can't he also be the Queenslayer?
Hey, I'm on board.
I like the sound of that.
I personally, I do not think Cersei's going to survive to the end of the show. I think she'll be around for a while longer because we need to see what she's like without her children. That was a big question that the producers have posed. Who is she now? And so she's going to be around for a while, but I think she's going to meet her end.
I think that storyline is kind of taking a back burner compared to the other storylines.
It is.
Yeah, I don't really see how that's going to fit in.
I think it's going to be part of
ones.
a battle for King's Landing, essentially. Is Cersei's going to go, and then a new ruler or rulers, or however it happens, will step in to take on the White Walkers. I don't think Cersei's going to make it to the big ultimate White Walker.
No, and you need somebody significant on the throne, like when Dany comes over and when all these sorts of things. Like, you can't have Tommen on the throne. Who cares? So
That's true. Poor sweet Tommen.
Right.
Do you think Dany's going to reach King's Landing next season?
I think she's going to reach it early next season, or at least reach Westeros and start. Because her whole thing is she wants to break the wheel. She wants to break the alliances, but I hope that's not her endgame. I hope she tries to unite everybody, build her Westerosi army.
Fair enough. So let's give a brief mention to some less interesting storylines. That's my editorial. First, we have Sam and Gilly. We checked in with them a couple times. Mm-hmm. He went to his house. Apparently his dad's a real jerk. And he stole his sword, which happens to be made of Valyrian steel. I don't remember what it's called right now. He also was it Wolfsbane?
Yeah, I think it's Wolfsbane.
Okay. He also reached the Citadel, the famed Citadel with the library, and there were light fixtures in there that looked a lot like the emblem of the opening credits.
Which I thought was a hilarious scene when he showed up and there was the guy with his little glasses and the giant book and a quill.
Well, his glasses were also they were the magnification that you also see in the opening credits. That's what that represents.
There you go.
And Samuel had to kind of update him on things that have happened in the last, I don't know how much time has passed.
So what do we think is the importance of the Citadel scenes?
I think Sam's going to do a lot of reading and find out ways that I think the White Walkers can be defeated. I think that's pretty much the ultimate goal there, is why he's there.
Because he already knows a few things from when he was
Right.
in the North and dispatched a couple of White Walkers just from happenstance. So I think Chelsea's spot on. I think he's going to be the information that Jon Snow needs to get rid of the White Walkers.
I was just thinking he's one of the people that Jon Snow will have to listen to if he's going to rule effectively.
He might be the only one he does listen to.
Yeah.
Right, but we need him there. We need him to go rediscover some of those
Lost pieces,
ideas.
yeah.
It's a renaissance almost. It's, their ancient knowledge that then is going to be rediscovered and reused in a way that is completely necessary if they're going to survive. And he's going to be that scholar to do that.
And then we have House Greyjoy. Theon is not Reek anymore. Do we care? Are we happy?
Just a quick little yay. We're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's all he gets, though.
Well, he makes it home. His sister's none too happy. And then their mad Uncle Euron comes back and offs their dad.
Which I think the show needs. The show always needs a bad guy.
Okay.
Throughout the seasons, whether it's been Joffrey or whoever. Now it's Cersei down in the south, and Euron now is kind of rising up. The show needs someone for us to hate. Ramsay's gone now. So
I see.
I think he may take place of him.
Okay, so you think he's filling that void?
So.
I don't think he'll be as evil as Ramsay though. But
That takes a lot.
it takes a
I
lot.
felt like his main function was just to get to the two siblings back together, because she was really upset with him, and then when they had to band together, they had a common enemy, then they're finding that sibling bond again.
And he propelled them to go seek out Dany
Yeah.
and pledge their fealty to her.
Yeah.
I don't see that being a major storyline. I think it's just kind of
It's just another putting the pieces into place.
It gets
Right.
them from point A to point B.
And there'll be Navy fodder if there's a naval battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which they made it to Essos. They talked to Daenerys at
Right.
the end of the season.
And now they're using part of her ships that she stole to get back.
Do you think he's going to complicate matters?
No.
No.
Ultimately, no.
No.
He may throw ships and, people may die, but
She has dragons.
yeah.
She does have dragons.
We saw what dragons do to boats.
That was I loved that. That was a really great scene with all three dragons killing the slaver ships. So what prediction?
Ship. One.
Oh, one ship. Okay.
Which was, no, I thought the same thing too, because I was talking with other people and I was talking about how I love that they laid waste the ships, and they were like, no, notice it was one ship. Because they kept the fleet intact.
Yeah, that's true.
Then they have them.
Yeah.
I was like,
It was smart.
That was smart, and I didn't even notice.
Don't destroy the resources, just show that you can.
Yeah.
It's true.
Good point. So, what do you hope to see? I mean, we've kind of bridged some of these topics, but what do you hope to see now that we're going into these last two seasons, particularly next season? We've alluded to the fact it's going to be shorter. It's also supposed to start later, not till next June.
Because they need more wintry landscapes.
They need snow.
Yeah, and maybe the episodes will be longer. We'll cross our fingers. What are you hoping to see? What's your main goals for season 7 as a viewer?
Minimal main goal, Clegane Bowl. I want the Hound and the Mountain to fight to the death. Or the re-death of the Mountain. Why else would they bring the Hound back if he's not going to dispatch his brother to make getting to Cersei and killing Cersei easier?
I just have that music from Star Trek, like the da 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 da, like the battle.
I want Clegane Bowl.
I know they've been shooting for that. I just don't see how we would get to that point. He's off being a zombie and protecting Cersei.
But again, you need to dispatch the Mountain to get to Cersei. It's going to happen, and I think the Hound's going to be the one to kill the Mountain to make Jaime killing Cersei easier.
All right, so whenever we get the battle, whatever happens in King's Landing, then you want them to be like a battle within the battle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brother versus brother.
All right.
Okay.
I could be down with that.
I'm telling you, it's the next big brother battle or bastard battle, whatever. It's coming.
They're not bastards. They had parents.
I know. I'm just saying. We had the Ramsay versus Jon, and now I want the Hound versus the Mountain.
Okay.
Okay. So you're shooting for season 9 Clegane Bowl. I mean, episode 9. Sorry.
Well, there won't be an episode 9.
Oh, that's right.
So at some point,
Episode 6.
even if it's just a few minutes, I think the Hound and the Mountain need to battle it out.
I want Arya to find her family so bad.
I do too.
So bad.
I think
want
she's
all the
going
Stark
to.
kids.
I don't know if it's
Stark
going to be
kids
this
need a reason.
season, but I think she's going to be going down her list. I don't think that's at the top of her list is to find her family, but I hope that maybe she just kind of comes upon them accidentally or something like that.
Because she doesn't know if they're all still alive.
Right.
That's the thing. She has no clue.
Yeah.
I mean,
And there's only 2 dire wolves left, and hers has been lost for seasons. So,
yeah.
although they have made mention of the fact that the dire wolves' fates kind of mirror their owner's fates. So Nymeria has been lost, Arya has been lost, if you will.
Yeah, and I think Arya is going to end up being a very obviously powerful tool, you know, with what she can do with her face, obviously. That
A
you know, I
tool
think
for
that
who,
would be that's why I'm hoping that she'll eventually come upon Sansa or Jon and will be able to be some sort of help to them and their mission. That's me. That's my romantic version.
Yeah,
That's what I would like to
I'd
happen.
love that, but I just think she's a little bit revenge bound right now.
Yes.
Do you think she's taking place of Lady Stoneheart at
There's
all?
been some floater theory about that. But then do you mean, will she die and come back to life?
No. I mean, because Lady Stoneheart was also seeking revenge on those that wronged her family. So instead of bringing her back as a character, or introducing her as a character, I should say, are they going to give Arya more of that task too? Like she's going to go and seek out the people that Lady Stoneheart killed, and are they going to have Arya do it instead?
I don't know. I mean, I think she's always been built to kill people on
Yeah.
a list, but it's her list. Like, I don't know that list overlaps with what was Lady Stoneheart's vengeance quest.
I don't either. I didn't read the books. I just researched a little.
I'd like to see more Lady Marmont. She really stole the show for me the last couple episodes. She was awesome. the little bear.
They'd be silly not to. And the fan reaction to her is incredible. Like,
Yeah.
everybody loves her. I haven't met one person who I talk about Game of Thrones who hates her or who doesn't like her.
Yeah, just
100%.
the gravitas that she held in a room full of so many just physically larger people, you know, systematically, that, yeah, she just was amazing to me. It was fun to watch.
That was a brilliant bit of casting. I don't know where they found that girl, but she did an
Incredible.
excellent job.
Well, in interviews, she's just sort of like that. She's just, my sister used to be like that. We called her Stone Face. You know, she did deadpan everything. And she's done interviews saying, well, but they all pretended like I was scary, like they're acting. So, you know, it helped that they were also actors. But man, you know, to find somebody that young who can just be like, I own all of you. I think we like that. If it was a real child, we'd all be terrified. But we like that idea of this little girl who's just like taking names.
Yes, for sure.
It's you know, we get some really strong, powerful female figures in this series. I think it's one of the things I enjoy is that the women can hold their own, and she's not having any of it. She was raised to be powerful, and she's going to make use of it, and I think that's cool.
I think that's a big factor of season 6, which is the empowering of the female characters, of the women of the show. I mean, you go across the board, all the women in power all the women are in power right now, different spots of the world.
That's true.
I think they needed to do that too because of all the outrage over Sansa's rape scene last year. I think they really, you know, whether they did it consciously or not, they kind of made it up to the viewers a little bit, like helping her. Like now she's super strong, Arya's strong, Cersei, whether we like her or not, she's strong, Dany's strong. Lady Marmont just kills it. I don't know. I think they needed to do that. They needed to give the women more agency.
I don't know. I just never had a problem with the Sansa rape stuff, just because it was. We've talked about, you know, historical stuff sneaking in. I think we talked about it last time too. But like, you know what? Yeah, it happened to women all the time. It still happens to women all the time. I don't know why I'm pretending like it's not a thing that happens now. But women are tough and survivors, and we see that, and we see her not letting that break her. And yeah, I think that is powerful, but I think it's also very real.
One storyline I'm going to be happy is done is the High Sparrow religious
Yes.
storyline. I was so
that was
sick of that. It was so
pointless.
boring. And to see his face melt like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's true. I thought that exact same thing. I was like,
great.
oh, it's like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I said there was some casualties that happened because of it that I didn't want to happen, but to see a lot of his henchmen and him all just melt was amazing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just to piggyback on the point of the women in power and the Sansa rape storyline, I mean, I think one of the things that I talked about the last time relative to that was as long as it had a point, it served a larger purpose, I was okay with it. And it clearly served a larger purpose. We got the payoff this season. She took care of the sadistic jerk that did this. She is in a position of power. She'll be Jon's hopefully listened to advisor, and whether she's the acknowledged Queen of the North or not, she kind of is sort of the Queen of the North.
Right.
And as Amanda noted, all the major houses are led by women right now. The major houses.
Yep.
I mean, including House Greyjoy. Euron and Yara are battling, but, half of the people support her. So I think it was conscious that the writers did it that way, but I think they were always planning to do it that way. I think that was their response to that whole controversy was just wait. So
well, and I think it convinced her. I mean, poor Sansa was passed around a lot, but it had worked out okay for her. She was always safe, and so for her to just ride the tide worked for her. And then it didn't. And then we see her start to change the way she starts interacting with the world. And I think we needed, not that it needed to go that far, except that in that world it makes sense, but she needed to have something to push her to start manipulating her own fate.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And not that she was lucky, but I just keep thinking of the phrase, everyone's luck runs out sometime. I mean, she wasn't lucky per se, but yet she was. She'd been with all of these horrible people that had tossed her around, but nothing truly horrible happened until she landed back in her own childhood home. Yep. And that's actually kind of a telling lesson. It's sort of meta-philosophical if you think about it. But I know for me, I certainly hope to see a Stark reunion. I would love more of the kids to be back together because that was one of my favorite moments of season 6. Maybe that's a little squishy and romantic, but I literally did cry when they hugged. I was like, oh, look, we haven't seen this since season 1. I just don't know if it's going to happen. I think Arya is truly bent on her mission, and I think that, I don't know, what's going to happen to Bran? Is he going to go north to try to warn the Night's Watch, or what's he going to do now that all of this horrible stuff is happening that he's watching? Maybe he'll go find Jon because he saw who his true parents are. I don't know. That would be my hope.
That has to come into play. Jon has to find out who his parents are. Since he never got the information from Ned, he needs to know. And I think Bran now realizes, hey, I should probably go find my cousin and, tell him he's my cousin.
Well, and he has an idea of what's coming and how bad it's going to be, where the people further south don't really know how bad it's going to be yet. I mean, he messed some things up. And so I think he needs to take responsibility and make sure that, they can respond appropriately.
I just hope he decides to go to Winterfell and not necessarily north to the Night's Watch, because I'd be happy not to ever go back to Castle Black again.
Yeah, I'm good on that.
Sorry, guy who took over Lord Commander.
Yeah,
sorry.
It'll probably come into play at some point, but I don't think Castle Black's going to be as big of a player as it has been. Without Jon, I
think we're going to see it fall a little bit.
Well, it's going to have to. And what's in the wall? What's in the wall?
Well, the information is that magics from the Children of the Forest and the Three-Eyed Raven are what held the wall for all those years.
There's also theories like something is in the wall. Like if the dragons go and melt the wall, they will find something inside the wall.
Oh, I've not heard that.
Yeah, they think there's some weapon or something that can stop the White Walkers, and the Night's King is inside the wall.
See, I read the books, but I don't read the internet.
I'm the opposite. I read the internet. I've only read the first book.
Right?
So.
I don't have good theories.
I mean, again, I don't know if there's any,
I read the internet, but I haven't heard this theory at all.
So there's something in the wall.
Well, I wonder what, and what use could it be? We already know all of the things that can kill the White Walkers.
I don't know.
Big ones are down south.
Maybe, because Bran is the Three-Eyed Raven, and he can see past, present, and probably future. He can probably go into the past and find out, how did they stop the White Walkers the first time around that kept them in the north, and if there is something in the wall, maybe he can see what was put there, and if it will be any.
I mean, the piece of the theory that I have read is that the person who built the wall is Bran the Builder. So he's actually namesaked for the person who devised and built the wall. But I don't know.
Or is Samwell going to figure something out?
Yeah. See, I think that's more likely the case. Otherwise, he does have no purpose.
We know about Dragonglass, we know about Wildfire, Sir Valyrian Steel. I think he's going to stumble upon in the archives that we haven't even thought about.
But we know about it, but does Sam or anybody important know about the Valyrian Steel? I mean, I know Sam knows about the Dragonglass, but does he know about Valyrian Steel?
I think he does, because I think he was...
Was he with Jon Snow at Hardhome when he...
Not at Hardhome, but Jon came back to Castle Black. I mean, all of that information was shared. Not necessarily on screen, but there were clothes. You know?
And it's interesting because doesn't Brienne now have one of the Valyrian steel swords that was made from ice when they melted that down to make two?
Well, she's always had it. That was Jaime's sword.
Well, interesting. Some key players have some key weapons.
We didn't see much of Brienne this season, but when we did, it was worth it.
She was busy filming Star Wars.
It's true. She was. She was wearing that silver helmet. It was weird. Anything else that you want to think about, reflect on, talk about as far as Game of Thrones Season 6, what you hope to see in Season 7, or anything like that?
How do we think Dorne's going to come into play?
Oh, I forgot to mention Dorne. I forgot to mention Dorne in the talking points. So yeah, they kind of let Dorne...
Sort of wiped out.
I feel like that says a lot.
They killed Prince Martell, and that was
the
it.
Sand Snakes wiped him out, and now they're kind of
yeah.
in control. And now that's another female-led, area, even though she's not technically the ruler yet.
And somebody else that wants to kill Cersei. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, the most important piece of that was that once Marjorie and Loras and House Tyrell fell with the wildfire, Olenna went and saw it out.
Dorne.
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, because
earlier.
they have the same enemy.
Yes.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
I mean, I think they're going to be the wild card of the major battle, and they'll probably, I don't know if they'll tip the scale, but I'm sure they'll come in and...
There'll be a weight on the scale.
There'll be a weight on the scale, exactly. I don't think there's much more to say about that because really, what is there to say about Dorne? I think that storyline has really not been effective.
Not
in
super
the show.
developed.
Never
So,
really went anywhere. Now it's really come to an end.
It's like the big thing was that they killed off Marcella. That was their big purpose, that's what happened.
Right, and there's been other houses that were just minor and they had one small role to play just to like screw something up for somebody, and then
They're done.
we don't hear from them again, and it's okay.
yeah, I'm okay with them not being too omnipresent in this season.
They'll just
7.
be, annoying enough where they get the job done or they help someone somewhere do something. And then they'll be probably gone.
I was surprised at how much more shocked I was to see and be sad about a direwolf's head.
I
As opposed to the
God.
hundreds of thousands of people we've seen die on the show. But also you see a direwolf's head, it's like, oh.
And I was more upset about Shaggy Dog than Rickon.
Well, I knew when Shaggy Dog died that it was Rickon had a matter of time.
But I guess, quick question, going to how you said the direwolf's fate mimics their owner's fate. How does Lady's fate reflect Sansa's fate? Was it because Lady was sacrificed for the greater good and then Sansa kind of was too?
Yes, basically. I mean,
Okay.
Sansa was originally meant to marry Joffrey, and she wanted it until she got there. Then she didn't want it after seeing how Joffrey was, and that's the parallel that people draw when they're theorizing this direwolf situation. Now, the direwolves play much more of a role in the books than they do in the show itself, and there's a lot of critique about that as well, because they're kind of one of the mystical elements of the show that hasn't been given a lot of weight, but that's supposed to be what the theory is. And Shaggy Dog dies, and now, I don't remember what Bran's...
Summer.
Huh?
Summer.
That's right! And he dies trying to protect Bran before Hodor dies. That one hit me in the feels, guys.
It's another cringe-worthy moment for me this season was the little birds when they killed the Maester.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Myself.
Did not see that one coming.
Who will be at Grand Rapids Comic Con?
Oh, really?
But he's the big headliner. He's got time now.
Yeah, clearly.
Yes, that was very gruesome, although I wasn't sad to see him go.
Yeah.
No.
He'd overstayed his welcome.
He's kind of really lucky that he lasted as long as he did.
He knew everything he did.
He's kind of a terrible person. Amongst terrible people, but what are you
there's
going
levels
to
of
do?
There's
terrible.
levels, yeah.
It's all relative.
Bunch of gray areas.
Are you going to keep watching?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Can't wait.
I can't wait either.
Can't
We
wait.
have to wait longer.
I
Until
know.
autumn, I think they said, next fall.
June.
Is it June?
Yeah.
Thank goodness. I was thinking it wasn't going to be till like September.
But it'll probably be done by September.
Yeah.
Who knows? But the anticipation is real, folks. I know I personally, when the show's coming around again, feel like I can't sleep like a kid before Christmas morning. But I'm just going to have to put those feelings aside, as the rest of the panel I'm sure will as well. But for right now, what I'd like to do is end our Season 6 podcast about Game of Thrones. Of course, our panel, consisting of Chelsea, Rob, Jay, Amanda, and Kristen, who I'd like to thank for joining me again, will reconvene after the 7th season, which will be over a year from now. Let's just talk about that. But we'll just, bide our time in great anticipation of the things to come. As for Couch Potatoes Unite, as I indicated in the intro, we have several more new episodes coming down the pike, as we always do. We have an American Horror Story series that's going to be intermittently playing over the next 3 months. We have some live events that are going to be happening here in Grand Rapids, and always new shows are being added to the list. So make sure you follow us at couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Stitcher Radio, on iTunes, on Google Play. We're everywhere, folks. You can find us, and please do. I think if you have as much fun listening as we do talking about these shows, and we've done our jobs. But for right now, I'd like to remind you to keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned. Bye-bye.